Well, you're getting into yoga as a spiritual practice, and so this is where we're uniting into the higher self. And what I'm finding is that you go to a lot of teacher trainings and they're teaching asana and they're teaching sequencing, but they're not teaching people to go deeper and to go higher. And they're not teaching them what yoga is really about. So what resources or spiritual practices would you suggest that people can start really looking and diving into?
What am I doing here? No, I mean, like, do I need to really be the modest or immodest? You're like putting me on a spot again. It's like, what are you going to decide? Like, is there some conspiracy going on here?
I'm just wondering if you have any suggestions.
Okay, let me think where to send you. Come on, guys, ladies. The lady is ready. Convert her right now into our... No. Seriously. I mean, I know it takes time, like this couple that was just with us in Belgium, they came last minute and there was hesitation because he was very keen and she was very hesitant. It all panned out lovely and nicely. But in the interview, when he talked about me, he said, you just have to get used to his sense of humor. The rest is fine. So, you know, the question you're asking is a very, very practical question. Very practical question. I mean, I can dismantle this question and invite you to look into it from the perspective of marketing, from the perspective of livelihoods, from the perspective of what yoga is as a phenomenology in terms of its popularity. And that will give you also explanations why some teachers either cannot go or cannot afford to go deeper. One or the other. It could be another factor. In order for a teacher to take you deeper, the teacher needs to be there. How can someone offer you guidance into the deeper realm of yoga if their experience is as flat as a yoga mat? So these have to be considered. So in other words, it's a positive perspective. Positive. It's a perspective of understanding why some teachers are incapable of taking their students into the deeper realm of yoga. And then smart students simply look for teachers. You know? And the teachers arrive when the student is ready. It's as simple as that. So, and again, to rehabilitate, with all due respect, because I don't want to take fun, some teachers of yoga are dedicated, amazing beings, with profound experiences. But you see that it's not just, like, to begin with, yoga in the West, chiefly associated with a kind of hybrid of yoga asanas mixed with gymnastics. Some of them are military gymnastics incorporated by this or that yogi in India at some point, at some time, and that's all we know here. That's our situation. The great yogis who came to the West are often considered as these luminaries, as these Mahatmas. They didn't open school of yogas. Yes, Yogi Bhajan did, and we have the Kundalini Yoga. But even in Kundalini Yoga, the crisis is brewing. We have students in our Sangha who are fully fledged Kundalini Yoga instructors. People who teach yoga, Kundalini Yoga, for many years come to my retreats because they're honest about their process and what they offer to others. Because you can teach Kundalini Yoga only within the framework of that what you have received as an instructor. But the originally Kundalini Yoga was the methodology of awakening of that force. And all the teachers in the early days were awakened by Yogi Bhajan's methodology and the grace that was accompanying this process. But the example is extreme. Can't we see the extremity of that example? Kundalini yoga is none of kind of just stretching on a yoga mat. It's a comprehensive system. So what we know in the West, in terms of teacher training, advanced teacher training, and so forth, we know this, which essentially a figment of yoga. And the emphasis also is on that physiological aspect of yoga, with a little bit of breathing thrown into it, and a bit of meditation if we have the time. Very often it's, compromised to just like a few minutes of sitting. I've seen it all. I sincerely have seen it all in my early 30s, in the yoga ashrams, in these courses. So it's not that I'm speaking from some hypothetical perspective. I'm speaking from direct perspective. So in other words, I want you to understand the situation also. Understand the situation, why that is not possible. And I want you to also understand that that situation is not all there is. There got to be this cross-pollination between these circles of Hatha yoga-based enthusiasm and enthusiasts and this growing uneducated army of non-dualist teachings. You've heard about non-dualism, non-duality, satsang movement, neo-advaita. No?
I'm a teacher, but so this is where I have a deep spiritual practice. So somebody has recently come to me asking me to help them go deeper, but this isn't a teacher training that I've done before. This is a different kind of teacher training where basically I'm helping him unlock within himself. And which is why I'm asking the question about taking someone deeper on that level, because the type of yoga I teach, I don't have like a name for it. I channel my work.
Sure.
And my work is to raise people's and to open people's consciousness. So I work through their channels, I work through their meridians, and I don't plan my classes. I go based off energy. So that to me, I feel like people are ready for that, especially in like Santa Monica, where everybody is used to the workout, and that's not yoga to me. Yoga is a deep practice into self, into the higher self. So with this person coming to me, who also has a very deep metaphysical and spiritual practice, and he's now asking me to raise the bar, and so I'm like, okay, I'm just looking at all the different avenues of where, what resources I can use to tap in to teach him, and because he strongly feels that I'm the person to help him. So I feel like I'm always when I'm given this sort of a challenge in life, it is meant because I'm ready. I'm ready to, I will never receive a challenge that I'm not ready for. So with this, this was sent to me just by chance yesterday. So I know I was led here for a reason. So I thought there was some information that you had.
Sure.
You're supposed to
No.
discover.
We can only give what we have. And it doesn't matter how empathetic or how passionate we are or how willingly we are. Because that in itself is in the nature of consciousness. We can only give what we have. Of course, this can be dismantled now that like Ramdas said, we all walking each other home, right? These are lovely sentences that actually very meaningful, very deep. Or everyone is is the teacher when you are really open yourself to the experience of learning. Everything could teach you. A dog and a tree and the sea and the ocean and the moon. But you are a teacher yourself, as you said. And there are practical matters. Practical matters. So if you ask me this question, other than turning this into a show, for a reason, of course, I invite you to look into that. That someone asking you to raise the bar and you're looking for venues, that's not the approach. It can only come from where you are in relation to yourself. It's almost like going out of your way, or going with your way, or going with what is going, or going with the wave, because there is this, essentially, a requirement is a wrong perspective, right there and then. Therefore, teacher is never made. Teacher is essentially revealed within. When teacher is ready, it's an apparent act, like the flower. If flower is like that, I want it to open. Okay, well, let's just peel the petals. Let's force that flower. Or in any process. In any process. Sprouting, making bread, anything, baking, whatever. For example, we give, there is something that is self-evident to the process. So, other than just blaming the situation like I just did, I invite you to look into this sincerely, where you would like to go yourself. Into what dimension of yoga? Would you like to go? Because I can tell you something now, and I'd like to share this. When methodologies like this, sometimes not properly understood, one can create the greatest obstacles to one's realization, because one thinks that one is riding the right horse. This is why, in my experience, when I work with people who are clueless, it's so much easier for them to wake up. Wake up fully, not just wake up as like shift in consciousness. A true visceral awakening can happen because there are none of these preconceived ideas. It's a virginal way. It's direct way. And it's so much harder for someone who already somewhere deep down there is a pact is created. You see? Deep down. And that attitude of a learner is diminished. And I've met it so much in yogic communities. That this is why existentially, sooner or later, like classical examples, classical examples. Al-Ghazali, the great colossal figure in, like Ibn Arabi and Al-Ghazali are huge figures in Sufi tradition. He was already an imam at the court in Damascus. Do you know what that means? I don't know, advisory in Washington to, like in his domain, he was the man. The man. And yet, at some point in a discourse, when he was giving his flowery, profound discourses to the whole bunch of his students, bunch here, like probably hundreds of people sitting there in the madrasa, his tongue suddenly stuck in his mouth and would not move. He could not speak a word. His speech was arrested, bound. And he realized there and then that he's speaking, and all these years he has been speaking from nowhere but mental understanding. And yet he is expounding here on the direct communion with the beloved. All this is mental, what have you. Manipulation. Excitation. Masturbation. And the courage of this man is precisely, was in going home, putting his kids to bed and a beautiful wife, kissing them on the head, goodbye, and leaving. All the wealth, position, power, authority above all else. Authority. We can leave all this, but authority we don't want to part with. And left wandering. It's a great example. Great example. To me, when I read it, I wept. Big tears were falling on the pages, like wept from that example. You know, he decided that he wants to live that truth rather than speak that truth and enjoy all the glory that surrounds that. No, it's not because someone challenged him. Not because someone stood up and said, look, are you living what you're speaking? No, no one would dare. He was already a teacher. And that's where the master is born. That's where the teacher really is born. Out of that place where that courage was to, that episode with the tongue, whether it happened or not, is just a sign from the universe. Maybe no one noticed. Only he knew. Who knows? We could just speculate. But what we do know, that he left all. And it took him quite few years, quite few, before he came back and claimed it all back. Claimed it all back. But he came, of course, not as so-and-so. So, I mean, I'll let the promo to be done by our facilitators and the plug-in and everything, and see you at the retreats. Your place is to come and experience this work directly. The yoga you teach, you need to experience in your veins, in your belly, in your heart. And, you know, everything tells me that that's why you're here. What else are you doing here otherwise? No? I'm not going to tell you, tell this guy this. Don't tell him anything. You know. Let me think about that. Okay? Don't tell him you're checking yourself into the retreat. Okay? Just like quietly go. Anyway. But the circumstances, the situation and everything, I'm sure this is just as frustrating, sincerely, for many teachers, unless they're so carried away with all this aggrandizement that popularity can bring, because there are already star yoga teachers. There is a whole pantheon of yogis. I haven't seen this whole scene, but I can see this like now, the same like it was in the 90s. Just because you bend your body this way, that way, that way. Yoga was never about bending left, right, and center. Yoga is to bring the left and the right, the moon and the sun. And when all this left and right and moon and the sun rises when it sets, you know yourself as that.